All right. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. I'm here with Lynn England, and she's the Chief Product Officer here at Virtual PBX. We just want to talk a little bit today about all things routing. There are a lot of different ways that you can route your calls. We have a lot of different ways that you can route your calls, but understanding what all those different options are might be something that would be good to walk through, both for our customers and for people looking for more solutions for their business phone service. Hey, Lynn, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you doing today?
Doing well. So just to kind of cover the overview, we're going to talk about everything from like an auto attendant setup all the way to like IVR routing, which includes things like select route, day route, customized routing opportunities. We'll kind of walk through all of those and give you the gamut of the options that you have to consider when you're looking at structuring something like that for your business. Fair? Fair overview?
Yeah, it sounds great. I'm excited to dive in.
Okay, well, let's start with the easy part, and just walk through like auto attendants are something that people can do on their own. That's kind of step one. So, can we start there? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
So,
okay,
from an auto attendant basis, you know, with virtual PBX, we do actually, to start, we do offer onboarding as well, where we help you build your system or we walk you through while you're in the training to configure your system however you need to for your business. And as part of that, the auto attendance is really the first step to determine, okay, if a customer is going to call your business, where do you want it to route to in the basics term? With an auto attendance, you can configure the default value of 1 to 9 potentially, and depending on the option that the end caller click on when they dial on the DTMF, it will go to specific departments, to a ring groups. So with auto attendance, you can actually configure this in the dashboard yourself, or we can walk you through how to configure that. And essentially, it gives the your customer an easy option to go to a specific department's team or whoever it is that they need to for your business and get their issue resolved.
okay. One quick thing that I wanted to ask about, you called it a DTMF. What is that? What's that acronym?
It's the dial pad. So when you're on a phone and the greeting asks you, hey, can you key in, press 1 for billing, 2 for support. The DTMF is essentially the button that you press, and the system will know how to route based off of that. It's the keypad,
Okay.
to simply
So
put
so
it.
it's kind of what we think about press 1 for this, press 2 for that sort of idea. That's what that DTMF is.
Yes, it's the tone. So essentially, on your phone, you have a keypad, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's used to key in informations, and that information is passed and it's routed and helps configure or recognize where it should go on the other end in the system.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so I understand that auto attendance, I can kind of associate that with using my keypad and pressing 1 and 2 and the different options. Does that also include if I want to get to someone's extension? Is that can I can I think about that in that same grouping? It's basically anything that I press on a keypad.
Essentially, it's so there's two side of it, right? The end user, it's they hear a greeting and then they choose an option based off of the greeting that they hear to go to wherever they need to go. On the other side, when you're configuring the system, you essentially have intention of, okay, I'm going to configure, maybe I have 5 different options because I have 5 different departments or specific people that are handling certain issues. So I would key in maybe option 1 through 5, and then for option 1, I might say billing. 2, it might be a billing specialist or a collection specialist potentially, just depending on what it is. And it could be a ring group that you're sending it to. You can also send it to a queue. You can send it to an extension of individual user that handle those issues. So it just really depends on the back end who or what you want the user to experience when they choose that option, and then that essentially would take them to whatever that experience may be.
Okay, so just for those watching, I'm going to quickly run through. A ring group is a group of people that you want your call to go to. So that might be anyone that is that you set up maybe in a particular department. A queue is more of an order, so you're going to determine how you want that answered. Correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Lynn. And then an extension is if I want it to go directly to a person. So those are kind of the options. They're almost like options within the auto attendant and within other routing as well. It's just those are kind of that second step. Is that a good explanation? Is there anything that I'm missing for them there?
I would say that extensions can be applied to potentially any. Like there is an extension for a group. You can place an extension on a ring group. You can place an extension in a queue and an auto attendants, as well as individual user extensions. And then separate from that, ring group and queues has similarity but differences in a sense that ring groups you essentially place several users potentially in a group, and then you can preset it so that the if the call is routed to the group, it can either ring all at once so anyone can pick up the call, or you can set it in an order so it rings from one person. If they don't pick up, then it goes to the next person essentially, and there's an order to that. It's preset by certain seconds for rings. Like usually we recommend at least 60 seconds, a little longer, so that way it goes through the groups. For queues, it's a little more complex in a sense that it also makes up of a group of users, but users that are in more of a call center environments where you can set it so that the user in that queues can either be answered like round robin, so anyone could potentially call and it will go from one to the next, or you can set it by skill based. Let's say the end user choose an option and maybe they need someone to speak Spanish with them. Certain skills are assigned to those users in the queues, and it will route to specifically based off of whatever the end user had provided input wise. So there's several components to it, and you can add more when it comes to queues than a ring group.
Okay. Thank you. That's a better explanation. I was trying to like distill it down to its essence, but it can be hard to do that because there really are a lot of choices, and you do get a lot of customization within the dashboard to kind of configure those things on your own. So that's great to dive in, and certainly we could talk about either of those topics at a later time, or anyone watching that has questions, feel free to call us and we'll walk through maybe the benefits of a ring group versus a queue, or what you might want to consider when you have both of those things set up in your routing system for your phone. So let's dive a little bit deeper. Once we get beyond auto attendance, we're moving beyond that and we're looking at things like IVR routing systems. So that's voice routing, right? We're diving into kind of that world of when you respond with when a customer might respond with their voice. Give me an overview. What are we talking about in that difference? I mean, we are going from something that has some customization options to something that is actually very customized. We work with our customers to set this up so that this can work for them. But tell me a little bit more about what we're looking at when we kind of get into those categories.
Yeah, absolutely. For those who don't know, IVR stand for interactive voice responses. And so essentially similar to like an auto attendance, right, where you call in and you hear a greeting and it takes an action for you to put in order to route the call. Similar things. That's a very basic of it. Our solution for IVR is Select Route. Now, we have this solution, which essentially what it does is we help you kind of understand your business use case and make recommendations based on what your needs. For example, in this case with Select Route, it's a solutions that essentially sits within your phone system. Let's say you have a Select Route in place, you have a caller calling in, you would ask them preset informations that are typically tied to your business use case in numeric, things like zip codes, account numbers, or a custom codes that are predefined that we would work with you to kind of configure in the back end. When they've put in those details, it then look at the database off of, let's say it's a zip code, right? And you preset in the back end that if it is a 98901 zip code, it would route to someone in Washington potentially, or California, depending on the zip code. So once you preset that, and the system is looking at that back in the database, it then routes to the correct location of, for example, if you have stores that are nationally and it's based off of those, that would be a good example of how select route would essentially work as an IVR, because it does requires that your caller do provide an input. And usually it's through a greeting that are placed there, asking, it's just similar to as a auto attendants, right? You ask them, please key in your zip code or an account number, et cetera, things like that. Once they've done that, then it will route them directly to the correct place. And
Okay.
that's our standard.
Okay. So that's something I actually on one of the last conversations that I had with Justin, we were talking about Google listings and the benefit of routing to zip codes or routing to areas, because that way you can use one number and get to any of your locations, and it kind of avoids a little trap that you get sometimes when you get directed to the wrong location if you're not pinging off the right towers. So it's interesting how things come full circle. So things that you mentioned, account numbers and zip codes, date of birth. I mean, things like, let's talk about some other things that people can enter, but is it basically anything that is numeric?
Yes, essentially you can keep key in. Simply putting it, it's one input for one output is the basic of what select route is, right? You ask your end user or caller to provide an input, whatever they keyed in, and it typically maps to a output on the other end for the routing. They don't ever really see that other than what they're keying in. And then they're able to get the response that they need, or their issues are being resolved based off of the routing that's taking place in the backend. And the
Okay.
nice thing about that is you can also set up webhooks or connections. So as they're keying in those informations, it can surface to your like the customer team potentially, that they can pull up data and informations and be able to take care of that issue with preset of informations from the webhook setup potentially.
So an example of that, if someone's calling in with, for example, a problem, they've entered their zip code, that can get them to the right person, to that, so that that customer service representative or whomever it may be is already able to pull up that case and get going in that information. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that's essentially the basis of it. If you think about like if you're calling your credit card company, right? They typically ask you for certain input, whether it's keying in certain options or maybe putting in the last four digit of your credit card or account number, things like that. That's a way for them to identify if you are who you say you are, essentially, and they'll be able to take the action or at least verify the information. So that helps the customer service agent potentially handle the issues from there and be able to
And
start the verification.
exactly. So, and additionally, my credit card number or the last four of my social security number, those things would become unique identifiers for me, I'm guessing, so that I could pull, so that they could pull up my account information specifically on the back end as they're routing me through the system. So it's also an efficiency method as well, because I'm not sitting, once I'm on the phone as a customer with somebody from the team, I'm not sitting there giving them that information again. They're already able to get a jump start on my information. Is that accurate?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, obviously, different businesses have different ways of verifying things, and they use
Sure.
those information to pull up certain things and still ask you or prompts you to answer additional questions. So there's still that nuances of it, depending on the business that you're talking to.
Okay. And that is select route. Is that, there's a difference between select route and auto route, correct?
Yes.
What
So
is the difference between what we just talked about was select route, correct? So talk to me about auto route.
I'll go into the details of the auto route in a second, but essentially the main difference between the two is with select route, there's the interactive requirements from the end user, right? They need to key in something to get something out of it. Versus auto route, there's no information that the caller is providing. The system is using the information that's already provided through the metadata of the caller, right? Like things like the caller ID, the phone number that the caller is calling from, the country code or the area code. Those are the information that's used in auto route to determine what's the next step where the call should be routed to. In this use case, or in auto route use case, think of it from an embassy perspective. You're a caller, you're calling in, and your phone number might display a different country code, right? And they might want to set it up so that if you're calling from, for example, a 52 country code, that's Mexico, you might need to speak to a Spanish speaker. So it automatically route you to a Spanish speaker to assess what your needs are from that. And it doesn't require any input from you at all. And that's the basic of auto route.
Nice. So that probably helps too when you have high call volumes and a lot of calls are coming in. You can by using some auto route features, you're already helping to process, organize, and prioritize those calls before that caller does anything at all, right?
Yes, because it's purely using information that's provided through the caller details. It doesn't require any input, so there's no error in that sense. The only thing is, oftentimes businesses will have a kind of a generic route where if they don't quite know exactly if there's a specific place that they need to route those caller to, then it just goes into that type of routing. And it could be something that will ask them additional questions, then reroute them somewhere else. But in general, it's just using the information that's already available in the system through the call.
Okay. And can you use a combination, I would assume, of both, where you are using some auto route features and then you're asking additional questions?
You can potentially, so it can route to, like, for example, an auto attendant. And then an auto attendant can ask you additional questions. Typically, we don't recommend nesting the features together because it adds complexity, but it really depends on your business use case and what you specifically need. Which is why here at Virtual PX, what we often do is when customers need customizations in their call routing or how their business use case is handled, we meet with them and kind of assess their use case to understand what it is that they need and then customize the solutions to their business use case so that it's more optimized from that standpoint. And we, of course, walk you through and help you configure all those details as well.
Absolutely. And something to point out there too with our onboarding and all of our processes to get a customer up and running and their account up and running is that we can also make those suggestions. So, right. So if you have an end goal in mind, knowing that end goal is important, and then we'll work to get you there. It's not like you're coming to us saying, oh, I'm going to need auto route, or I don't know if I'll need auto route or select route, and that you're having to make those decisions. We have experts that are going to be able to configure whatever you need in the best and most successful way and use case for your company. So there is an element of virtual PBX that is always sort of custom from that standpoint, because that's just how we build it out for you. So we're walking through the options so that you know what your business can do, not so that you have to figure that out on your own, just so that you know what the possibilities are and what's out there. What else should we know about things like select route and auto route? One thing that we're really good at here at Virtual PBX is helping businesses scale. Our SMBs, we have seen a ton of growth year after year from customers who sign on with us, and we make it a point to make sure that all of our products and everything that we can offer them is really easy to scale. So you can start with just a couple of people, you can start with one person with that plan to get larger. Routing is part of that scale, part of planning your scaling. What can they do, or what could they set up initially, that's going to help get them to a point where they can very quickly and kind of seamlessly scale. I know that that's coming through select route and auto route features as well as auto attendant, but talk with me a little bit about what we've seen or what we can do for companies as they grow.
I mean, it really varies depending on their business use case. The best way can really put it is, for example, if you're a new business starting out and you want to have a phone system set up, start with the auto attendants where you can configure and make yourself appear a lot larger as well, right? Where you set up the menu options for the caller to call in. They can be routed to billing, customer service, sales, etc., depending on how many departments you essentially want to set up. But the caller, their experience is pretty seamless. They choose any options, it goes to, and it could just be you potentially, where you're answering all the calls within the different departments, but the end user pressing the button to go to those departments, they don't know that. So you can start from that basis there and present as a much bigger business that can support your customer base, and then scaling to adding more users that could handle those different scenarios to a point where you've expanded into several locations, maybe in several states potentially. And at that point, you want to optimize the best way for your customers to have that experience as they're calling in. In which case it might be helpful to have either select route or auto route, depending on your specific use case. Select route might be great for having multiple locations across different states, being able to have those customer be supported by their local area. If they put in their zip code, easily routing them to those local areas of where they are based off of their input. Or with auto route, having users that maybe support multiple languages, different use case, things that you can extract from their caller informations and being able to just route them seamlessly and handle those scenarios from there. So it really depends, and it can be scalable from one person operations to hundreds. So I would start from those areas. And then separate from that, we do also have custom call flows. Now, custom call flows has several components to it. There isn't one like set and done. We tailor that to your specific business. There might be certain things that you need to customize. So if you think of it from a standpoint where maybe you're closed for lunch or closed for a certain holiday or certain days, there's different customizations that you can preset so that there's different greetings or certain routing that takes place during those set period of time. And you can configure it using custom call flows on our end as well.
Okay, that makes it makes a lot of sense. And I guess one takeaway, just jumping back to auto attendant, I love that we can help businesses look bigger. I think that's one of the best advantages of a business phone system. But what that also does is it kind of helps you organize your back end. So say you do get multiple calls in and you do have different departments set up. Sure, it might be just you, but you know who's called in for billing and you know who's called in for service, and you know that I may need to get to those service requests more quickly, or there's a billing issue that I need to handle more quickly. And so it kind of helps categorize and prioritize for you on the back end also. And the customer, the caller is not seeing any of that, but what they see on the front end is a larger business that is extremely organized with how they're operating. And that's just one of the first opportunities to help do that for you. Just, we talk a lot about trying to help give businesses an extra set of hands. And that's just one kickoff way to do that with an auto attendant. Once you move into routing and some of the more complex routing, we're still doing that. I know we have a lot of like franchises that we work with. We have a lot of kind of co-op businesses where they've branched off into other in a lot of cases, honestly, just other states. But we do have some that are across the United States, and it makes it extremely seamless for them. But they started with that organization in place, and it made it easier to grow up to something like that pretty quickly and easily. Just having those side conversations with Justin about some of the great, we just saw a lot of wonderful customer stories this year and their growth. And I just wanted to capitalize on some of the things that we're seeing people do. Let's talk a little bit more. Custom call routing gives you a lot of flexibility. It also, when we talk about extra hands, it does that through holiday hours, closed hours, basically being another tool of communication in your and within all of your communication options, within all of the channels that you're looking at. So let's talk a little bit. I would love to talk a little bit more about how they can utilize those features to kind of get, again, to communicate with customers and get an extra set of hands in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have lots of different customers that may have varying hours of operations that are open versus closed, and certain staffs that are available on certain days. So being able to be flexible in terms of how those calls or what's issues are going to be able to handle on those days for the customers. We leverage custom call flows for those customers, essentially, where we may configure, this day, like Monday, they are open 9 to 5, normal hours. So the call routing is going to go to the main auto attendants. It has the normal setup, but maybe Wednesday, they're only open half day and they need certain setup for those specific time to route to one individual that's covering. So being able to configure the routing to go directly to that person that's covering on that Wednesday helps the business scale, because then they know that, okay, regardless of what our operations are, I have these customizations in place to support the customers whenever they call, and we know that our calls are going to be answered and the issue is going to be addressed.
Excellent. And what about when things get really busy? What can they do? A lot of the businesses that we talk with, busyness is sporadic. They can't necessarily plan for it all the time. What can they do in those situations, and how can routing be utilized to help them when things get kind of unexpectedly busy? That could mean that somebody is out sick, or it could also mean that there's just a lot of calls coming in that day, or something's happened that needs their attention and service.
A lot of time, this big push in business is just never miss a call from your customer. And we live that sentiment too, where we want to make sure that your business is capitalizing on your operations to ensure that you are answering all the calls that are coming in. But we also understand on the operations side of things where you might not have enough staff in place that support those mentality. So in order to support you, there's different solutions. Most customers, they understand they might not be, someone that's available 24/7 to answer the call, but what they want is a response and intention with the response behind, whatever their issues may be. So there's different solutions you can set up in place to ensure that your business is optimized for that. Sometimes you might need to create a voicemail box for the caller to leave a voicemail. And then the nice thing is with our system, you can also have those voicemails be delivered to your email. So you can see the transcription of the voicemail and take action immediately. Let's say you're on another call and you see that voicemail message comes in, you may be able to address the concern immediately while you're still handling another call potentially. So it gives you the option to be flexible from that sense. There's, we had initially talked about ring groups and queues. Queues, I would say, is another great options to help improve that experience. There's options that nobody really wants to wait on a call, be on hold for a long time. But there's definitely different options within a queue where you can set it so that you can give the caller a call back to address their issue as soon as you're available. So callback features within queues is a component that we also recommend if you do have call center features. And that ensures that the customers can go about their day, take care of whatever they need, and they'll get a call back for what they had called in initially as soon as someone's available to take care of those issues. And usually, unless you have significant volume, that's within 30 to 60 minutes potentially. Um, the other components of it too, in terms of like the business operations, there's different way that you can set it with the ring groups, right? If no one potentially is available to answer the call because everybody's busy on a call at the moment, you can also set up a next action. The nice thing too is if you have employees that are either on the go or in office, if they're in office and they're part of the ring group and they're not able to answer, it could be forwarded to a cell phone potentially. And those that are on the go are able to answer the calls and address the issues from there. So there's definitely several components and features that you could configure and set up so that it optimizes the user experience of your customers.
Excellent. And I want to touch on a couple of points again. I know you talked a little bit about call centers, which we do work with a lot of businesses and their a call center, which is kind of what you, for anyone listening, it might be what you picture. You know, you're calling in and you're getting one of multiple people who are going to assist you with a problem. It's customer service in a lot of cases, or some tech support, things like that. That's where we see that most. But I want to emphasize that a call center isn't, I know initially I picture in my head, 30 people, bustling center where everything's going, but it's not always like that. Many of our customers have call centers that are just a couple of people. The point is, and the way that you categorize a call center is in how the phone is actually working, and things like queues and callback options and things like that are all part of that. So when you think call center, you want to think this big place, but for most of our SMBs, which are our core audience and customer profile, for most small and medium-sized businesses, call centers are in some cases anywhere from just a couple people to maybe, I don't know. I know we have some that are around 30 to 50. So, I mean, it definitely spans, but it can begin much smaller than you realize, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it just kind of gives you an example. We actually use our product, a call center product as well. And essentially what it does is it gives our customer base, instead of calling in and maybe everyone's unavailable in that moment in time, going straight to a voicemail. And that is, of course, an option. But instead of going to voicemail, you can stay in a queue and wait until an agent's available. Or you can also get a call back. So it does give you more flexibility on how you would handle the customer interactions and the volume of customers that are coming in from a call center perspective.
And we're a great use case for that because we do have the staff in place where we don't usually have a lot of wait times, but Monday mornings just tend to be a little bit busier, things like that, where something is busy, or on rare occasion, I mean, we are in winter months for a lot of parts of the country right now. And I know we've had people just battling, one illness after another. So that's always just the human element of being a human business, because we as a company pride ourselves on being human. There are those things to contend with as well. And we use features and routing and auto attendance and things like that to help us when somebody is out sick. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get the support that you need right away, that somebody's not going to give you the attention that you need right away. It just helps us organize a little bit better on the back end so that we can do that faster for you. And that's the takeaway, I think, that I see with a lot of the features that we have here at Virtual PBX, but with routing in particular, is it's not just one element of this. It's building the back-end organization and building that front end of customer experience and support where customers truly do feel like they get your attention, your priority, and get that return call if they call back, things like that. But it's putting it all together so that we provide that experience. It's more than just one independent feature or one part of routing. What else? Is there anything else that customers and prospective customers should keep in mind when they're thinking? Maybe they've reached a point where they're like, I might need some help with routing. Are there pivot points between an auto attendant where they're doing that on their own? They can certainly have us help them with that, but it's possible to do that through their dashboard versus making that jump to programmable IVR, and where are those pivot points that they might be looking for? When are they going to start to feel some pain points that or some friction that suggests that they may be ready to move to something more sophisticated?
I mean, with auto attendants, it comes as part of your phone system. So you can configure it, we can help you configure it, but it's the basic entry point to how your customer interacts with you through the phone system. Now, as your business is scaling and you need more than that basic input, where you have multiple locations, you might have other data points that you really need to have more intention behind how those calls are routed instead of just going through the menu options and pressing to go to a specific department and asking further questions. You want it to be more intuitive and create a better customer experience as you're scaling. Then that's when we really recommend trying either select route or auto route so that the initial experience from the customer, it's already picked up based off of like the information that's been configured and set up so that those customer coming in and are routed to a department or a team already have their basic details to interact with the customer rather than just them having to go through and choose different options potentially.
So what I'm hearing then is you might be seeing that through customer friction points, either longer hold times than you used to see, or maybe just less satisfied customers. I don't know that it necessarily means that you have an unsatisfied customer, but customers that don't feel like they're moving quite as smoothly. And you may see that your customer facing team members may see that in some of their interactions. And then also efficiency and speed. So if you feel like if you're getting the sense that things are bogging down or slowing down, that might be a good indication that there's an opportunity to gain some efficiencies with some of those more custom solutions. Anything else that I'm trying to think through those scenarios too with some of our existing customers of, those opportunities when you think I am at that point where I need to add another step to make this a little bit more smooth. Because that is what customized routing is doing, is it's continuing to smooth the process. I feel like that's a great big picture analogy, is it's making things smoother, both on both the internal and external sides of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really helps with scaling of the business. We have customers that do support like local base customers. And oftentimes, especially nowadays, nobody really keeps the phone number that's in that local area, right? So there might be some additional inputs and they're calling from their cell phone. And it makes it really difficult for you to potentially like use something like auto route because they might be calling from a completely different area code than where they're at, but your location, like you are addressing customer issues based off of local locations. So being able to use something like select route where it does require a very basic input from that customer in order for you to route them to the right local locations to handle that issue and be able to potentially address it the same day helps improve that experience as a whole. So little details like that makes a big difference in the customer interaction and the experience that they have with you as a customer.
That's a great nuance. I'm so glad that you brought that up because it can be difficult to determine, when we might use select route versus auto route. And I think that's another thing that points back to our team of kind of expertise. When they help you set up your account, they're helping you make those calls, making those really subtle differences between, oh, I have someone calling within this area code, I have someone calling from outside of that area code, and what that might mean and how we might handle that differently in a setup situation. I want to touch on, just because we always do, how routing can benefit like remote and hybrid work as well, because I know that's a core component of the things that we provide for our small and medium-sized businesses, is the opportunity to be flexible, both from a talent acquisition standpoint, but also for employees, because remote work is a big part of the work environment today, and hybrid as well. What does routing, whether that's as simple as an auto attendant or as complex as a custom day or time routing, what can we do to help businesses who are considering or working with hybrid and remote work environments?
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of it. It's the flexibility. It's a cloud-based system where the routing itself, it can go anywhere. It doesn't have to go to a specific physical location. Obviously, if your business is more physical driven, and it's local, like more of like service, actual physical service, then it may be a little bit more difficult, but you can still route it to that. You might have a business that is specifically located, but your support center might be more of a centralized place that can be distributed anywhere, but within the United States or the world potentially. How you handle that initial interaction and then be able to route them to that service area locally or otherwise helps improve that engagements as a whole. So I don't think it really depends on specific location. And in fact, it makes it much easier to streamline that hybrid or remote environment. So it creates more collaborations and ensuring that regardless of where you are, you have that coverage and you're supported and you can support your customer base wherever you are.
So I think what I'm actually hearing from you is that it doesn't really matter, to be honest. It works the same way whether you're in one physical location together, or you have a combination, or you have all of your team remotely calling into work or being present for work. You made me think of something when you talked about service, because we have had kind of an uptick of service oriented businesses, but they've got employees that are out actually performing that service. They are using cell phones or they're checking in on emails. And we use a lot of call forwarding with some of those routing options as well, so that those employees that are out in the field actually doing the work are able to push that call, or in some cases text and things like that, out to them at the same time, right? And that's all part of it, but just again, one more piece of the puzzle to build a smoother experience internally and externally. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Like you just made me think of something in terms of like Slack route, right? With a service, let's say you have a service technician that's specifically in this state or in this county, and you have it routed so that if the customer input in this specific zip code, it routes to that technician. They know they can service that customer within that same day or the same week potentially because they're in that local area. Having that connection between the two, and especially as an end user, if you're having an issue, you want that addressed ASAP. So that part ties it together and makes it more seamless and being able for you to just automatically do that with very minimal input from the customer.
well, and as a customer, I mean, I'm just thinking, I mean, honestly, when you gave me that example, I kind of took a little sigh of relief, like just in my own brain, because wouldn't we all love that? I would love when I call a business to be connected directly to, okay, how quickly can you help me, or what the problem is? And routing gives you the flexibility and the capability of doing that. It also puts some of it spreads the load of your team out. So you don't just have this bottleneck filter of getting everyone to the right place. When you put a little bit more ownership on the rest of the team, not only can they control their schedule a little bit more when those calls come directly to them, but it frees up your leadership areas for the things that they do best as well, and puts a lot of onus on every individual, which I think can be very helpful for some businesses and companies, especially, again, small and medium sized businesses that we see a lot of. It's all about sharing the hats that everyone's wearing, and that's a great way to do that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Not to mention a great customer experience, because uh, while we talk about all of these things that are kind of that feel automatic or they feel kind of robotic, what all they are is processes to connect humans. They don't interfere in fact, they support a very human experience throughout the process. So I think that that's kind of an important thing to note, is that we may talk about different configurations and processes, but those automations and things that you're seeing running through. The customer doesn't see any of that. And in fact, your team members don't usually see any of that. All they see is, I am a human who called and I got another human. And that is incredibly powerful, especially today. Um, is there anything else that we should know about just the process of routing? Or the customization? Are there other customizations that we should mention that can be included? Can you think of maybe the craziest use case or scenario where you would make things super complex? Basically, we can handle that, is I guess what I'm trying to say. But if you have any scenarios or examples that you can think of, feel free to share them. I know every customer has a different custom experience with what is built for them. I know, a lot of
Yeah.
custom in there.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it is we work with our customers to tailor their experience and to ensure that the process that delivers human experience to human is seamless for their end user and then for their team as well. This whole process, we help them deploy it, configure it however they need to so that there isn't any if friction for their customer as a whole. And in general, I would say that with select route and auto route, these are things that we would configure and work with you to build completely. So there's no, like, we take part ownership in this process with you to ensure that you're delivering the best frictionless experience to your customer base so that they will never see what goes on behind the scene.
Yep, we're all about, we connect the dots. You are the dots, we connect them. And you don't necessarily see. I mean, it's true. A lot of our diagrams and a lot of the visuals that we use to explain some of these things with customers, they're just dots. We are connecting. We are just making tiny little connections to everything that you need, and we do that quite seamlessly for you so that it is human to human. I think that summarizes everything really well. But again, if you have anything to add, I know I repeat it all the time, but anyone watching, if you have questions, you can call in. It doesn't matter if you're a customer or not. We're happy to answer questions and brainstorm with you. It's actually something that our team not only is very good at, but they kind of geek out on. So
Absolutely. Yeah, we love to help our customers, and we really get into the weeds of some of these technical things as well that may seem a little bit nuanced to someone that may not understand the aspects of routing. But we will work with you and get you set up so that you can run your business the way you need to.
yeah, it's a great puzzle for our team. I mean, like truly, they really enjoy figuring it out. Well, thank you, Lynn. I appreciate your time. Thanks for talking those through with us. I know they are details that people don't necessarily ever see, but it's always great to explain what the options are so that anyone who comes to us can feel informed and kind of understand what we're working with them to create in the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to dive into any of these topics. I know when people think about phone system, they don't always think about all the nuances and details that goes into configuring it, setting it up, and how to potentially optimizing it, because a lot of this does live in the back end. But that's really what we're all about at Virtual PBX. We want to have those conversations with you, and we want to understand what your use case are so that we can help serve your business better.
Absolutely. And then the best part is we can tell you about all of this stuff and we love explaining it to you, but you really don't have to know unless you want to, because we're going to set it up the best way that works for your business. We just want you to know and feel the transparency of us of giving the explanation and sharing that with you too, so that you can know if you'd like, but you can also know that you're in great hands and we can get it going for you without knowing all the details. A
Yeah,
lot of people
there's so
come to
many
us with a
different.
lot on their plate.
That's true. That's why we have lots of different options with onboarding as well. For those that really like to get into the details and configure themselves, we have the self path where you can do whatever you would like with your system. And then, of course, we're always available to assist with that. We can also work with you and build the system together. or we can build it for you based off of whatever your needs are. So those are kind of like the three main paths that we have tailor made to whatever your experience you want to have with us.
Absolutely. Yeah, our onboarding team is fantastic, and I always talk to the person who may not want to deal with all of this, but we do have a fair amount of people who do want to deal with all of this, and you're welcome here too. And we'll gladly, we'll stay out of your way. We'll be here to answer questions, but otherwise, this is your system. In either case, this is your system for some onboarding for onboarding some customers, we help them every step of the way. And for others, we really just do the opposite. We stay out of their way, and we're just here to as a question point if they have something that comes up. So, well, thank you again. I appreciate it, and we will talk with you next time.
So to essentially sum it up, Select Route is essentially where the caller calls in. We present them with a greeting that asks them for specific information, things like their zip code. Once they put in the details, which is the DTMF keying in the information, the servers then look up the information, then routes the call to the correct team. The informations of how those calls are routed are pre-configured with us so that the customer, when they're calling in, they never experience any of that. They simply just key in the information and then get routed to the correct team. With auto from the customer at all, it's simply they call in, we recognize the metadata from the caller information, such as caller ID, their area code, country codes, things like that, using that information and have previously configured where those calls should be routed based off of the call metadata, and then just sending the call directly there. That's simply put it, that's the difference between the two. So for auto route, think of it as a non-interaction options where we're not requiring any information from the caller. The caller will just call in. There are certain informations that is presented already in the call, things like the caller number, the caller name, country codes, area codes, things like that. We use that information and pre-configure a route that will go directly to whether it's a team, to a group or a queue potentially, and then route them directly there without the customer ever needing to provide any input. So it does create a little more seamless experience, but the limitation is it specifically just using data from what's provided in the call.